that you're enjoying yourself so far. To all of our students, we hope that the stories you hear today from the people who have turned their journalism skills and storytelling passions into a business will leave you feeling empowered. Because let's say it out loud, artificial intelligence and other forces are taking away too many entry-level jobs in newsrooms and PR shops. The career path that I took to get here is gone. But there is really good news. As old business models crumble, new ones emerge. News consumers who care a lot about baseball or personal finance or politics or space travel are increasingly turning to niche information providers instead of mainstream news organizations. Maybe you will be one of those niche providers. What's your passion? Next up, we'll hear about how some news organizations are enlisting help from news influencers. Some might call them trusted messengers. You'll hear more about that. To attract new audiences and how those messengers are seizing the opportunity. Marlene Harris-Taylor is a director of community engagement at the American Press Institute, where she helps newsrooms build deeper, more authentic connections with the communities they serve. One of her immediate key focus areas is helping newsroom leaders embrace collaborations as an essential piece of their strategies to reach new audiences. A veteran of public radio, television, and print journalism, Marlene has won numerous prizes, including multiple Edward R. Murrow Awards and Ohio Excellence in Journalism Awards. Amy Schafer is the business manager and the former editor-in-chief of the Daily Collegian here at Penn State. Last summer, the Collegian participated in API's influencer cohort, which helps news organizations work with influencers and trusted messengers through collaborative experiments with third-party creators. As part of the cohort, the Collegian received $3,000 to test and learn from an influencer experiment here in State College. Please welcome Marlene Harris-Taylor and Amy Schafer. Yeah.
Test, test, test. Can you guys hear me? Good morning, good morning. I'm not sure where to stand or sit. The presentations this morning so far have not included slides, but I have slides, so I think I'll stand. And so before we get started, I like to know who I'm talking to. So I'm wondering how many of you are aspiring journalists, like you actually think you might want to go share news in some fashion, either by working for a news organization or being a content creator. Show of hands. Okay, all right. So how many of you are thinking about doing more marketing, PR type work? All right, so more. And are there any other thoughts to do something different than that? Anybody else going in a whole totally different direction? Maybe business or something like that? No, okay, all right. So I'm so glad to have a chance to chat with you guys today, and I'm going to share some of what API has been up to. API is an organization that has been spending time working with local news organizations across the country, helping them understand what things they can do to increase their business and also get connected closer to the communities that they serve. First, I want to ask you this question. Raise your hand if you have been influenced online to buy or do something. Almost everybody, right? Yeah. So see, I didn't even have to tell you guys to be honest, because everybody here is being honest about it. So we all have been influenced, right? And we can all influence others. And that's the basis of this like new creator economy that's really kind of taken hold. So who are we? Who is American Press Institute? You've probably never heard of us. We are about supporting local and community-based media. We want to help build healthy, responsive, and resilient news organizations through research, programs, and innovative products, strengthening the future of local journalism. And what we've heard this morning, if any of you were around, you heard some stories about how the local news landscape is really changing Everything's evolving right now. Everything is really in flux. So everybody's trying to figure out the way forward right now, including I know some of your professors here are trying to figure out the way forward, and I know all of you are trying to figure out the way forward, right? So this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to look at the influencer landscape, right? And talk about what's going on out there. We're going to talk about trusted messengers and why credibility matters more than ever. And we're going to talk about some collaborations that work. And that's when Amy's going to come in. And she's going to talk about a real world collaboration that the Daily Collegian did with some local content creators that worked out really well. So that's the path forward for us for this short presentation. Now, starting out, I probably don't need to tell all of you this, but millennials, Gen Z, they're willing to pay for news. How many of you are willing to pay for a subscription, or if there's news you like, how many of you are willing to pay for it? Raise your hands. Yeah, that backs up what we're seeing here, right? 55% of consumers aged 16 to 40 bumped into news that they actively seek out. That's another part of the study that we found out through API, that instead of people seeking the news, going to a news website, buying a newspaper or a magazine online or in print, most people bump into the news by being on social media. Does that include you guys here? How many of you bump into the news? Raise your hands. Yeah, that kind of matches what we found out, right? So that's where people are. So it kind of makes sense that if we're creating news, we, news creators, have to be where people are. So the influencer landscape. So API did a study to try to find out how huge this influencer landscape is. And we also looked at what other people looked into. And this is what we found, that the full-time creators, people who are becoming creators for a full-time business, people who are getting their news from influencers, it's just kind of exploding right now. So we all kind of know this in our daily life, but this research is backing that up. So all that to say that the creator economy is here to stay. It's not going away. So why do we think that the creator economy is growing so fast? Well, when we talk to people, when researchers talk to people, they find out that the news feels overwhelming. And I don't know about you, even me as a long-term news person with so much going on in the world right now, I feel overwhelmed sometimes when I'm listening to the news. How about you guys? You feel overwhelmed? There's just so much going on every day, internationally, nationally, locally, that people feel overwhelmed, and they're trying to find that way to have a connection to news, and they're looking for people who can take all this and have it make sense for them, right? Also, Americans continue to get a lot of their news from family, friends, and neighbors. They're the biggest influencers, right? How many of you have that person in your family? You might be the person in your family that people call up and say, hey, I heard this on the news. What do you think about it? Because of you guys are going to school here, you're probably that person. But a lot of people still rely on their neighbors, their family, and friends. So that's sort of like hard for us, people who are in journalism, to think about. We do all this work and all this research, and, people still listen more to Uncle Joe than they do to us. It's kind of like disconcerting, but it's the truth. And social media has overtaken TV as America's top news source. Now, I know that this is true because I have 2 adult children, and they don't even turn on the television when they're in my house. They don't live with me anymore, but when they come in, no TV. How many of you watch TV? That's good. That's good. How many of you watch TV news? Right? One hand in the back. We still do. We do. Our generation, we do. But you guys don't watch TV news. So that's really tough for the TV news people, right? And you might notice that if you ever do turn on your television, you'll hear your local station saying, oh, we've added another newscast, right? So they keep adding more and more newscasts to try to get more and more spaces for ad dollars, because the amount of money they're getting is shrinking and shrinking. So they're trying to figure out ways to keep those ad dollars coming in. So all this to say, it's a tough environment out there, right? So when we think about these people who are out here now trying to make sense of the news for folks, or what people are searching for on social media, or people are following on TikTok or Instagram or on YouTube, right? Many people like to use this big term influencer to talk about everybody, right? But what we're finding is that some people don't like that term influencer, because sometimes it has this negative connotation to it, right? When you hear somebody's an influencer, what do you think? Is it good or bad when you hear they're an influencer? Thank you very much. They're trying to sell you something, right? And sometimes even it's associated with people who are like the Kardashians, you know, sort of the big folks out there who are brand marketers, if you will. So what we found at API is that there are other terms that can be used. You can use terms like trusted messenger, creator journalist. Sometimes community leaders and liaisons in the community, sometimes they're the folks who have a huge following in your community. And they're not influencers in that traditional sense, but they do influence how people think about different issues. You have community organizers who have big followings on Instagram or TikTok, right? You also have institutions that have followings, like libraries, community foundations. So there are many people and institutions out there who are serving that role for us of trying to make sense of what's going on in the world, or who have followings from people who want information. And they're not always influencers, and we found they don't like that term. So we try to propose that people think of using the term trusted messenger or content creator as an option instead of influencer, to sort of describe these folks who are doing this work. Now, there are different kinds of trusted messengers by size, right? You have the small folks, the nano or hyper-local content creators, and we've heard from some of them this morning. They have fewer than 10,000 fans focused on specific topics or local interests. You have the micro-influencers, macro-influencers, and then the mega, over 1 million. And a lot of times people think of the mega when they think influencer, right? But what we found through our research at API is that when a news organization thinks about, hey, well, maybe let's partner up, when a local news organization is thinking, let's partner up with a trusted messenger in our community and go to where our audience is, let's meet them where they are. We found that it's best for news organizations to focus on the nano or the hyper-local content creators. And that's because when a trusted messenger has 10,000 or fewer fans and they have huge engagement, they are the people who might bring folks to your news site, right? Because of their engagement, people really trust them. And also, if you think about it, if you're a local news organization and you're putting out your news in your local DMA, as we call it, right? Your local area, if you have a local person that has 10,000 or fewer fans, they're more likely to reach the people in the area you're also trying to reach. If you work with a mega influencer with over 1 million people across the country, what's the chances that one of those people are actually interested in the news in your local area? So that's why we found it's best to think about working with those smaller folks with high engagement. So there are different types of trusted messengers as well. They fall into these categories: educator, entertainer, journalist, trendsetter, and advocate. So let's talk about them a little bit, the different kinds. There's the educator. That's the person that's focused on explaining and teaching. And I'm sure you've seen this kind of person, this kind of content creator out there, right? And then there's the entertainer. Now, we all like the entertainers, Right? We like the people who are funny, who could take even a serious topic and make it seem fun. They could take a complex issue, and especially comedians, like the example that we have there is a comedian who worked with one of our news organizations to help explain like a local election that was coming up. And then you have the journalists. We've talked a lot this morning about the journalist content creators, right? The people who either had worked at a news organization and gone off on their own, or maybe folks like some of you who want to be journalists who think about, hey, you know what? I'm just going to go out here on my own and try to build an audience. Then you have the trendsetters. Those are the people who are sort of like the brand ambassadors we've talked about, who often are trying to sell you something. And then we have the advocate, the people who are really passionate about something, and they advocate on that particular issue. So when you think about as a news organization, if you're a small news organization, you're thinking, who should I work with? Right? What type of influencer, and not only by size, but depending on what kind of project that I want, right? If you want somebody who can translate a reported resource, you have to think about that. Who do I want to work with who can help me with that? If I want to promote my news organization or host an event, what kind of content creator do I want to work with for those type of events? If I'm having a community listening session, who might be best for that? Who do you think? Who would be best for a community listening session? What kind of content creator? Just shout it out of the categories that I just shared with you. I see you thinking about it. Maybe an advocate, perhaps? Yeah, okay, yeah, that's what you're going to say, I know. What about if you're looking for somebody to promote an event that you're having? What kind of content creator might be best to work with for that? Trendsetter, right. So that's the thinking, right? You have to think about who might be best for us to work with when we're thinking about, hey, we're a news organization, we're local, we want somebody to work with us. Right. So we're going to now talk about a few case studies. What we did at API is we brought together a group of 16 local news organizations, and we called them a cohort, and we gave them $3,000 each to go out and do some of these collaborations with content creators so that they can learn from that experience and so that we all can learn from it and we could create case studies to share with other people. And that's what Amy's here to talk about. But before I turn it over to Amy, I just wanted to share one of the other case studies from that cohort. And this was the Houston Chronicle, and they were trying to figure out, okay, well, what do we want to do? Because the Houston Chronicle is a legacy news organization. Many people in the newsroom were like kind of skeptical of this idea of working with content creators. So they thought, well, let's do something that's a little more low stakes. It's not really like the hard news, if you will. So they decided, let's start with working in our food area because there's a big food scene there. And so they reached out to the food editor on staff and said, who are the people in our local area who are on social media and who are talking about food, right? So they mapped their area, if you will. And so the food editor said there was one person that she'd feel comfortable working with, and there was a guy who called himself Sean the Food Sheep, right? And so they decided to work with Sean. And so they were trying to bring in, as you can read there, younger people and people who they were not already reaching through their traditional audience. And they thought Sean could help them like that, with that. And because the food editor trusted him, they thought, okay, well, Sean, he respects what we do. He respects our ethics as a newspaper, but he still has his own authentic style, right? And they also realized that they had to also respect Sean. It had to be a real collaboration. The newspaper couldn't just tell Sean, okay, we want you to change your style now and do it in the way we want you to do it. We have to respect that Sean is going to have to be able to create in his own way. So this is an example of the 3 TikTok videos that Sean created. One was where Sean actually, the one in the middle, he actually interviewed the Houston Chronicle's food critic. They went out to a restaurant, and he and Sean just kind of sat around and talked about food, and he talked about his background. And it served 2 purposes, because not only did it help them get creator content out there, but it introduced the food critic to a whole different audience. And the food critic was new, so that was a great way of doing that. They also had Sean follow them around on they do these tours of food restaurants in the area. So Sean followed around and did like a video about that. And then he also helped them promote another one of their food tours that they had coming up. So this is the results. So it definitely increased their viewership and the signups for their newsletters. Conversions, which are like what everybody's going for, right? Will these partnerships with influencers will actually help people not only consume this content on social, but help bring them actually to our site, bring them to where they're actually paying for our product. Whereas you can see that number was not great, but it was 6 more than they had before, right? But it did expose them to a different audience. But one thing that we know through these collaborations is it really can't be just a one-off in terms to get to those conversions, right? It has to be more of a sustained effort over time. You have to give it time for that audience to become, that new audience to become comfortable. And when the new audience comes to your site, there has to be other things there that interest them in order for them to stay and think that this is worth them paying their money for, right? So it did spark curiosity and trust. They got the comments, they got the views. People wanted to come to their event, to their food event, because of that work, but not so much on the conversions, but it will take a longer, more sustained effort for that. All right, so now I'm going to turn over to Amy, because Amy and the Collegian were also part of this group of 16 news organizations that API worked with. And so Amy's going to share how that worked out, how this collab worked out for them.
Yeah, thank you. Is my mic on? Can you hear?
You just got to hold it closer to your mouth.
Okay. Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about the influencer collaboration that we did.
You want me to click for you?
Yeah, that would be great. So this year I was a business manager at the Daily Collegian. Last year I was the editor-in-chief. So I kind of had the opportunity to have been on both sides of things and kind of understand from like the content creation side, but also like the management side. So I wanted to start off by just introducing the Daily Collegian. If you don't know us, we're Penn State's student-run media organization, and we've been producing coverage of the state college community since 1887. And then, as said earlier, this summer we were selected as one of the cohort members in the API influencer cohort. So just a brief overview of the cohort. She kind of went in depth on it, but we were part of a cohort of newsrooms, including the Houston Chronicle, Public Source in Pittsburgh, the Minnesota Star Tribune, and I think there was 16 of them total. As part of this, the Collegian received one of the $3,000 grants towards, sustaining our influencer collaborations and expanding and reimagining the way that we cover news in our community. It was meant to be kind of a starting point for further influencer collaborations. To kind of break down our strategy, the primary goal of this was to share information with incoming and current students about the local community and student experience at Penn State. The platforms that we focused on were increasing reach through our Instagram and our YouTube, since that's where most of our student body is following us. Our target audience was new and incoming students, since it was over the summer, as well as community members and alumni as kind of secondary target audiences. And then when it comes to influencers, we knew that we wanted to collaborate with influencers across a variety of different niches, different content styles, and try and engage with different audiences. So just a breakdown of the different influencers that we collaborated with. First, we had Landon Tengwall. He's a former offensive lineman for Penn State football and a podcast host. So with Landon, we were trying to, bring in that football audience, outside football audience that we weren't already reaching. And then we also collaborated with Schafer, who's a student influencer that creates content focused on his experience as an international student. Then our third collaboration was Mason Coma. He's a recent alum, so he had just graduated. And he's an influencer that creates like student life content, man on the street style stuff. So we wanted to kind of engage like the recent alum audience with him, like continue following us post-grad. And then our last collaboration was with Mitchell Brown, who's a student micro-influencer in like the lifestyle music space. He's also like a musician and kind of creates his own stuff as well. So we were trying to engage with like that sort of niche audience. And then I'm just curious, like show of hands in the room, how many of you guys have seen content or watched content or maybe even like follow one of these influencers?
Oh, that's a great response.
Yeah. So yeah, how many of you have seen content from or follow maybe more than one of these influencers, like multiple of them? Okay, a few. So yeah, breakdown of kind of the content that we did with them. So for Schafer actually offered to collaborate with us for free. So all we did was pay for like some of the food used in the videos. So we did like kind of, feedback, student advice reel with him. We did a collaboration for Arts Fest where we had him go and try a bunch of different foods at Arts Fest and like kind of give his review on them. And those were all very successful videos. And then with Landon, we did a podcast episode and had him promote the podcast through a reel and then also promote the Daily Collegian's Football 1-0 podcast. With Mason, we did a video. He wanted to take kind of a historical lens to the content. That was kind of his passion. So with him, we did a YouTube video and reel about the history of the corner room at Penn State. And then we also did one for Old Main and Chumley's as well. And then for Mitchell, we kind of collaborated in that music space. So we did like a real talk reel where we had him give like, like hot takes, like real kind of thoughts on different stuff at Penn State. We also had him do like a collaborative playlist for the whiteout, and then other kind of stuff just targeted at like student experience, like advice for students as well. And then some key cumulative metrics. So overall, we got 167,000 views across our videos, 5,000 shares, 177 comments, and close to 9,000 likes. So a lot of our content performed particularly well. We were really happy with the success of this, especially because typically our summer content, we really like don't see a lot of views on, we don't see a lot of engagement with, just because students aren't on campus most of the time. So this was like a highly successful summer for us when it comes to like, gaining followers and maintaining like steady views and metrics.
What were the months that this content went out? Like June, July? Yeah,
so we started the cohort in May, and then like most of our content went out June, July, and then beginning of August. And then I think the cohort wrapped up around like August 15th or 16th. So it was like right that week before school started.
Like you say, typically a slower time for you guys.
Yeah. So this was our highest performing post. I have like a snapshot of the metrics here. A lot of shares, a lot of watch time, a lot of saves on our posts. We had really high comment engagement, which is something that we don't have a lot. And a lot of people like resharing our posts. We had like a lot of, I don't have it up here, but we also had like a lot of engagement from non-followers, which was another key metric that we were looking at. And then I have like a snapshot of some of the comments. People were really engaging with it. It was one of the earlier collaborations that we did. So yeah, I don't know if we can click on it.
Yeah, this is the one we were going to try to show a little bit. I'm not sure.
I don't know if we can click. Just see. We don't have to watch the whole thing.
If you click over there, will it play? Got to go back.
If you can click click on the words at the bottom, yeah.
It looks like it's thinking.
Well, if you guys, I don't know if it's working, but if not, it's oh, there we go. Is it
going? Experiment in real time. Okay.
I don't think it's showing up.
I see it just muted. Sorry, we got some tech help in the front here. What'd you say?
Do you want to, yeah, click
You
on
have to
it?
click on Safari at the bottom. Thank you for that tech help.
Yeah, it's just like escape on the presentation so that we can, and then,
Like you have to open up
yeah, like
the
stop the
the
pause.
browser, basically.
Because the presentation's still showing up there. It's okay. You guys can watch it on the Daily Collegian's Instagram. Oh, shameless plug, but
Little homework for you.
yeah. But yeah, I'm sure some of you probably maybe already saw it. Show fans, how many people saw one of the influencer collaborations that we did on the Daily Collegian's page? Okay.
Oh,
so
that's
pretty many.
awesome.
How many
Yeah.
of you like hadn't seen the Collegian before that? So most people are following. Okay.
Yeah, this audience probably knows the Collegian,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Collegian.
So you ready for next slide?
Yeah. So yeah, some key takeaways. Expanding was big for us. It's helped us to expand our reach by engaging with new audiences. Pulling in some of those non-followers that were from the influencers pages. It also allowed us to maintain. Another goal takeaway was like we hope to maintain positive relationships and collaborate with influencers again leading into the future. We've already been talking with the influencers that we collaborated with over the summer to try and do like some more stuff in the fall. And then we're also trying to like experiment with different storytelling styles. So it helped us like to experiment with, engaging with people in different ways that we hadn't really thought of before beyond like the traditional news telling. And then we were also able to like explore new approaches to telling the news, connecting with students, doing things in a style that like we hadn't really like explored before or maybe didn't really think of as like typical way to like tell the news to other people. So, yeah.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Amy. So, one of the great things about this is that it kind of gives you both perspectives. It gives you the perspective of the newsroom collaborating with the trusted messenger and the trusted messenger collaborating with the newsroom. Because as I think it was David might have mentioned earlier this morning that that's something some of you might actually be doing. You might be the person who says, hey, I want to collaborate with the newsroom, or you may maybe be working for an organization or an agency, and you can propose that as their PR person or their marketing person. Hey, what if we find a way to find an influencer to maybe spread our messages around? Or if you're on that other side, maybe you might want to work with an agency. So it's something for you to begin to think about as you consider your career path as you leave here, that I think these kind of things are going to be going on more and more as newsrooms realize where everybody is getting their news and they have to be where they're at. But one of the important things is trust and credibility. And that's one of the things that the trusted messengers bring to the newsroom. Because we have all heard, and I'm sure you've heard the stats about how, unfortunately, legacy news is not as trusted as it used to be. And more people are trusting the content creators online over the legacy news organizations. So this is one way to help build up the trust and with your audience by coming across as more authentic and finding someone who can present that information in an authentic style. So these collaborations can be a win-win for everybody. It's a win for the newsroom. It's a win for the influencer because, hey, regular pay, right? If you're out there and you're a person who's doing content creation, regular pay is something that's sometimes hard to come by. And the audience wins because the audience gets better access to good content, good information that's backed up by a news organization that's doing all the stuff that news organizations do. Research, vetting, editing, all of that, right? So API has put together what we call a guide to influencer collaborations. It's free. It's on our website. And it gives you even more of these case studies, more information about how we did these collaborations, more information about how it worked in the different newsrooms and the different scenarios, and there were different projects across the 16 newsrooms. So if you're interested in that, it's out there on our website, and it's free for anybody to access and use. It tells you about how to map your local influencer. It even gives you things like when you're a newsroom and you're doing a collab, maybe you're a small newsroom, you need to put together a contract, right? Because so we have some sample contracts on there for you on how to pull those together. So all the resources you might need, this QR code will take you right there to that influencer guide. So if you're interested, feel free to take the snap on that QR code. And how are we doing on time for questions? We're good? Okay. All right. So that's me. If you're interested in getting in touch with me, feel free to reach out anytime. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. All right, so now we're going to open up for questions. Come on, I know you got some. Don't leave us standing up here. Yes. Have I personally connected to the way forward? Well, I mean, obviously through this job, right? I mean, full transparency, I've been doing this role about 3 months. Before that, I was with a legacy news organization. I was with IdeaStream Public Media in Cleveland, Ohio, where I was doing this type of work. I was the director of engaged journalism. And so I was sort of pioneering in our market, working with influencers, because I was producing a podcast. And we were putting our podcast out in little bits and pieces. And the podcast was about gun violence in the community, you know, that persistent gun violence. And we were talking to people on both sides of the gun. And so we were trying to reach a specific demographic with that information. And so what we did was we reached out to a local content creator, influencer who ran a website that really reached the specific community that we were trying to reach that was different from the public media world and the public media audience that we traditionally reached. And we found that when that influencer posted those clips, oh my God, the views and the engagement went through the roof. If we posted them on IdeaStream's Instagram site, we maybe got 1,000 views. When this influencer posted them, we got 30,000 views in an hour. We ended up with over 2 million views of the clips from this podcast by doing that collaboration with that local content creator. So that's how I personally learned that this works. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's the holy grail, right? Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, I'll answer the second question first. In terms of news organizations being worried about these content creators ruining their reputation, that's their number one concern. When we talk to news leaders across the country and we're talking about this idea of doing this, that's always the big concern. What if this influencer does something crazy and that's gonna mess us up, right? But to your point, I mean, by this time, with so much research out there on this topic, news organizations should understand at this point that the trust and credibility with the public in traditional news is at an all-time low. But what we say to them in response to that is that you have to do your work ahead of time in vetting people. You want to find people who match your mission and who you feel comfortable working with. You have to watch their stuff. You have to go on YouTube or Instagram and look at what they do. And if in their traditional stuff that they're putting out doesn't match what you feel comfortable with, don't work with that person. And newsrooms do partnerships all the time in the form of hiring freelancers. Right. So this is not a lot different from that. I mean, when you hire a freelancer to work for you, what if that freelancer says something crazy in the world, right? So you have to vet the people that you're working with, and it's no different. Now, to get to your first question in terms of the money, the return on the investment. As I shared, there were only, I think it was 6 conversions, meaning paid subscriptions from that experiment. But that was one experiment over a few months. So it has to be a more sustained effort to answer that question. So I can't answer that question right now. But one thing we do know is from this experiment, the Houston Chronicle decided to convert part of their newsroom to put more green screens in because they found it so valuable that now they want their reporters to learn to put content out the way that the local influencers do. So they see the value in it. Now, it hasn't turned into that return on investment in terms of dollars and cents yet, but they see the value in this is how we're going to reach new people. Yes.
Yeah, so that's something we're actually like in discussion about right now because
Maybe we should repeat the question. I don't know if the people in the back can hear.
Yeah, he said like, how does this work outside of the grant period for like an independent nonprofit newsroom? Like, how are we getting funding for it? Is your question, I guess, or yeah. Yeah, so we want to definitely
now?
Yeah, what now? So we've been in discussion about this. We definitely want to continue to do influencer collaborations. We think it's something like very worthwhile. Kind of when it comes to your question too about return on investment, I would say for the Collegian specifically, it's a little bit harder because we don't offer paid subscriptions. So, you know, there's a little bit less of that, you know, yes, like we're getting more views, we're getting more followers, which could translate to like advertising revenue. But in terms of like value proposition, it's a little bit different. We want to like try and expand, exploring ways to have like maybe outside organizations help to sponsor like influencer collaborations, put money behind it, because right now we don't have money in our budget as a newsroom to continue those collaborations. Thankfully, we're lucky enough that some of the influencers are willing to keep collaborating with us for free. They find it like to be a mutually beneficial partnership. So we definitely want to continue collaborations. We're looking to kind of expand and reach new influencers, younger influencers that are just coming into Penn State. Even kind of without that grant money, I do think a lot of like influencers, trusted messengers see a lot of value in collaborating with a news organization because it also helps them get their name out there more, especially if they're trying to like grow their platforms. You know, just coming to the university, we're looking at, you know, some like freshmen, sophomore students that are maybe like just entering the influencer space. That it can kind of be a mutually beneficial relationship where we also have a lot of followers. We can help them grow their platform. They can help us grow our platform, reach new people. So yeah, that's kind of the next
That's
steps.
a really great point because we've heard from other influencers that even after the period ended with that they were getting paid, they continued to mention the news organization that they worked with more than they did before because now they're more aware of that news organization and they tend to go to them first to get the news. So that collaboration continued on even beyond that period of time. And I think that some newsrooms have to think about moving resources around. Maybe you don't have new revenue to do these kind of collaborations, but what are you spending money on now that you can move into this space on your budget? Because if you see the value in reaching new audiences this way, what are you doing in your newsroom, other places in your newsroom where you're not getting a return on the investment? Take that money and move it into this space. Yes.
Mm. Yeah, actually, this is kind of something we were already starting to do. Like last year when I was editor-in-chief, I created like a platform host position where kind of the goal was to kind of create our own like Collegian influencer style person. We were recruiting broadcast majors to get them to kind of be like the face of our platform, do more of that informal man on the street style content. We were experimenting a lot with our TikTok, doing kind of more informal, like engaging with trends, kind of trying to be on more that on that humorous side to engage with students. So like the API influencer cohort kind of hit at like the perfect time where we had already done like a little bit of the initial groundwork. So I think that this was like a really great example of like, okay, we started the initial steps last year. Now we've seen how it can be successful through somebody that is an established influencer, is a trusted messenger to help kind of continue to growing that. So I definitely want to like do more kind of in-house stuff, train our reporters to kind of act more as a like trusted messenger kind of style format of content. But I think like the influencer collaborations were really successful, and people are ultimately going to trust like people that are already following rather than like, you know, growing that like brand through the news organization. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Amy. I'm told we're out of time, but thank you all for your questions and for your attention. And I hope this gave you something to think about in terms of your careers as you leave here and how this might be a new way forward for you. Thank you.